Hi everyone, welcome to the Product Marketing Festival. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the sessions that we have lined up for you today. With expert presentations, specialist talks and deep dive panel sessions on the agenda, suffice to say, you're in for a treat. Just before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who's played a part in making this event possible. Our sponsors, partners, speakers, presenters, and of course you, the product marketing community. You can engage with all our speakers and their sessions today by posting your questions in the comments section of the broadcast, or you can reach out to them in our Slack community. Remember, you can catch up with all this week's content on demand, plus a whole host of other amazing benefits by becoming a PMA member. And whilst you're at it, why not check out Product Marketing Core, our industry-renowned certification. But for now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next session. Hello everybody and welcome back to session 2 of the Product Marketing Festival. Thanks for tuning in again. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Ali to the virtual stage next, but just before I hand over to you, Ali, I want to remind everyone that this session is completely live today, so we're going to be ending with a live Q&A. So make sure you get all your questions and comments and feedback and points you want to run by Ali in the chats throughout the session, and I will be asking those to Ali afterwards. So yeah, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Rose. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us live. Really appreciate it. My thanks to the PMA for organizing this. Really excited about this festival and all the content. And I'm excited to be able to share with you for the next 30 minutes on a topic that's been near and dear to my heart for the last several months. And it's all about how me as the Director of Product Marketing at Keneo, working with a large team here to build and launch a brand new marchitecture. As Rose said, we're going to do our best to leave some time for a question or two at the end. So you can put those in the comments, but I'll go in afterwards if I don't get to you and I'll take a look at them and I'll respond there if I can. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you aren't already. Always happy to help out my fellow brothers and sisters in product marketing. So let's get started. Now, do you know this building? No, this is not one of my choices for a summer cottage that I'm thinking about. This is the Basilica de Sagrada Familia in beautiful Barcelona. So if you've never been to Barcelona, you've never seen this, go one day when it's all good to do so and you feel comfortable for that. But the story behind this is that I've been talking to some of you directly or via online, and some of you, I think, feel like that you need to build a marchitecture or you've been asked to, but it feels like it's going to be an exercise in building a beautiful cathedral like this one. Now, if you don't know the history to the Sagrada Familia, it's not finished yet. It was actually started in 1882, and Gaudi was the first official architect to pick it up. And he wanted to bring his own vision and the cultural aspects of Catalonia into this huge architecture. He never got to see it finished. So it just got handed over from prodigy to prodigy to prodigy. And over time, it's grown and morphed. And as you can see, it's sort of a combination of different styles within a single building. Now it's going to be finished estimated inside and out in the year 2032. But I wanted to basically bring some light to you all to say, you know what, building a marchitecture isn't as hard as you might think it is. And there are some easy ways to be able to do it and see success with it. So let me go into that. What are we going to cover today? It's all about a journey, very much so. And so I want to start right at the beginning of that journey with you all and talk about what a marchitecture is and what it is not, just so we get a baseline and we know where we're going. Then I'm going to talk about the journey that we took from the very beginning to realizing we needed to do something to where we are today and where we're going to go forward with that. And also, more importantly, I want to be able to share with you how we brought this to life. It's one thing to create a marchitecture, but actually to apply it is another. And then I'll talk a little bit about what we're thinking next and maybe some ideas for you as well. So, first question, what the heck is a marchitecture anyway? Did I just make that word up? No, first of all, it's a portmanteau. So a combination of two words brought together, marketing an architecture. So the first thing I want to point out is that a marchitecture is not a pretty version of an architecture diagram. That's not it right there. And I've heard some of you talk about saying, yeah, you know what? Some of the technical guys I work with have basically given me an architecture and say, make it pretty. That's not what this is. So rather than me coming up with a definition, I'd rather take one that's out there already and sounds good to me. So let me share that with you. It's from Ian Gorton. He wrote a book called Essential Software Architecture. And this is what he says. A marchitecture is an excellent vehicle for facilitating discussion by stakeholders during design, build, review, and of course, the sales process. It's easy to understand and explain and serves as a starting point for deeper analysis. That sounds good, but let's break it down a little bit. First of all, marchitecture. You're going to see a couple of different spellings of it. There's Ian's one right here. Mine was a little bit different, but same idea. So it's an excellent vehicle for facilitating discussion by stakeholders. First thing I want you to take away from this is going to be something I'm going to repeat. A marchitecture is a vehicle or a tool for having meaningful conversations with your key stakeholders, whether they are internal or external. That's the first thing. It's a storytelling tool. Next thing, it's easy to understand and explain. So that's another thing that you're going to have to keep in mind in the challenges of building a marchitecture. If you were to show this to someone without talking through it, would they be able to get a lot out of it right away? And likewise, whoever is delivering this, is this something that they'll sound convincing with, whether it takes them 2 minutes or 2 hours to talk through? So that's the key thing to keep in mind. That's probably the trickiest part of this process. And then it's a starting point for deeper analysis. It is not intended to be all-encompassing with every single detail. Instead, it should inspire others to be able to look at that, hear you and go, you know what? Tell me more about that particular part. I'm interested in that. That's the reaction you're getting from a marchitecture. You've done it right. And then there should be follow-on conversations from that. Now, let me share with you some examples, some good examples of a marchitecture. The one that I feel is the benchmark in this is Salesforce. Now, you may well have some others of your favorites. There's lots of good ones out there, but this is the one that I've always looked to and aspired to as well, for a few reasons. First of all, if you look at this marchitecture here, you'll notice it doesn't go into any technical depth, but it is relevant to both a business and a technical audience. It talks a little bit about how their applications are built along the top, as you see there, which is really what you buy. But notice they're just now icons along the top there as a suite, as it will, if you will. It reflects their brand. We've got Einstein here. So that's associated with Salesforce. Totally get it. And the thing is, it actually has been adapted for things that had not come along yet. If you see some versions of this from a few years ago, there were actually empty spots along here. They've now filled those in. So I could go on and on about this particular marchitecture, but this to me is a great standard to be able to look up to. Another thing is that do a search online for Salesforce platform and then click on images. You will find this or a variation of this pop up a lot, which is again testament to its success in that it's been used in so many different places. Now it's really important here. Don't confuse marchitectures with tarchitectures. Again, it's not another thing I made up. That is a portmanteau for technical architecture. This is a tarchitecture. This is the classic architecture diagram that you tend to think about and have seen. So this is another example with Salesforce, as you can see. This is more intended for a technical audience. It's fine, it's good, but it's intended to explain how something works and what does it have. It's more for a technical audience who would understand each of the components here and want to know where those integration points are. So this is not a marchitecture. It's still important. You may well need to do this, but this is much more traditional. I'm talking about something different with the marchitecture. Now, some of you I've spoken to look at feature hierarchies or feature matrices. I would argue that's not a marchitecture. It's the starting point for creating one. And the reason being is because if you do have a complex offering in the portfolio of products that you are helping bring to market and bring to life, you may need to think about the hierarchy of capabilities to products and offerings and services and so on, and how they relate to each other. That's a great start for this. And you'll need to do this for things like pricing pages, right? But this is not a marchitecture. Hard to tell a story with this. And this is certainly not a marchitecture. Again, from Salesforce, this is an illustration or an infographic. That's not a marchitecture. It really is just a nice list that puts something in the center that is a focal point for conversation. It's an illustration, basically. So don't confuse it with that. If you're thinking this is a marchitecture, go back to the drawing board. So let's go into our journey. What did myself, my team, and my colleagues go through in order to build a brand new marchitecture? We actually had one to begin with. This is it. This was actually created before I started at the company. And it's good. It's fine. Pretty standard though, right? You've probably seen a version of this before. It talks about all the different integration points where data can come in. Then it talks about us and our offering. And then it talks about how all of that can be used. But I did spot some challenges when I started, and as I was using it myself, as well as observing others who were trying to use this themselves in their presentations. First of all, I did notice that some of our sales professionals were actually skipping over this slide or talking about it very quickly, which I found bizarre. And the reason being was because they were looking at going, as you can see, we have all these different sources that we support. And then, we've got our capabilities, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And then, of course, we're going to support all different channels you have today and tomorrow. Wait, what? Hold on. There's more we can talk about here. But that was an interesting observation. Secondly, from the audience's perspective, somebody from the outside looking in, what I saw was a sea of icons. And the challenge is that in some cases, some of these icons and labels aren't relevant to me. I don't care about. And so I may gloss over. That's not good. The other thing, frankly, is that you could take out our logo and put the logo of a company in any other field in commerce technology, and that's a broad area, and it would still work. That was another challenge. It needs to be unique. So I saw this as an opportunity to be able to take this to the next level. Now, first thing, as always with many of these projects that we work on in product marketing, what's the first step you take? Talk to people, listen carefully to what they are doing. And that's what I did. So who should you go to first? Salespeople, maybe? Product managers, right? Got to go talk to them first. No, company leaders. Talk to your leadership team. This is something that's going to represent what they have been building as a company with their offerings and products. And you're giving them a tool that you can help to visualize what that is. So I would start here. So the first person that I talked to specifically at Akinio was our Chief Product Officer. And I also spoke to our CEO and other leaders as well. That's where I started, because I felt like if I could get their buy-in and alignment on the direction we needed to go, things would be easier. It was then that I went to product managers and my team in product marketing and got more of the specific input and started to think and explore and brainstorm different approaches and what should be included and what should not be, and what was roadmap and what wasn't, and so on. So that was the next step I took. And then I went to sales leadership and some of the sales champions that I've been knowing and working with already to get more specific details about how do they present it? What do they want to present? And more importantly, who do they want to share this with? Your marketing teams. So you need to go and reach out to your leaders in marketing. So maybe it's demand gen, field marketing, content, and so on, because there are opportunities for them to be able to leverage what you produce here. And related to that, if you have a design team, whether that's internal or external, get them involved early. This is something that I did as well, because they will help explore how you're going to visualize the marchitecture ultimately and how it can be used. If you go down a path and start designing it yourself too late, and then design is coming in and making it pretty, you may find you'll actually start limiting yourself in the ways that can be used. So get them involved early to explore options about how it can be visualized and across different channels that you'll use it. Analysts and influencers. So you're going to start building a story around this. Test it with them. So this is something that we did earlier on before it went live. And we used the inquiry process and the strategy sessions to actually bounce this off an analyst and see what they thought. And we actually got really good feedback on things we were missing. So if you have an arrangement with one of the analyst firms, take advantage of it. Otherwise, there may be other influencers out there that you know of that you can tap into and just be like, hey, we're working on a new idea for, say, marchitecture if you want, or a new story or new visualization. Can I bounce it off you and get your feedback? Do that. You will find gaps that you didn't know were there. And then finally, and obviously, test it with your customers and partners. You've probably got some champions out there amongst your customer base or your partner base. Pick one or two of them and just test it off them, see what they think. I'm sure that they would love to be able to have that early view into it. So I got the feedback from lots of people. And from that, I was able to synthesize lots of ideas for where we wanted to go next with this marchitecture. And one of the key things was we needed something that we could present to business decision makers, as well as to a technical audience as well. And then, like I said, go into deeper analysis later on. But that was the key thing. This had to be something that a business side of the decision-making process could look at, and we could have a short or long or meaningful conversation that would inspire them to react positively in some way. It needed to incorporate customer goals as well. And so this is more than just about us and what we do. It really was centered around the customer and what they are trying to achieve, so that it illustrated visually as well as through storytelling that we had a solution for their pain points. Now, as well as the technology, we also want to include people and process within this visualization. Okay, now you're really giving me a challenge here. But as you'll see, we address this. This is a really important part. People don't buy technology for the sake of buying technology. If that's what I'm assuming many of you are in one way or another. But there's always people and process involved that needs to be taken into account. And so can you incorporate that in some way into what you do with part of your storytelling through marchitecture? It needs to be customizable, easily customizable, so that it was relevant to the audience and we didn't have a sea of icons that weren't relevant to them. It needed to be adaptable. Could this be something we could still use a year or two from now, even though our offerings may have changed? It had to be unique. It had to stand out in some way or another, whether that is calling out unique differentiators through the story and visualization, or it's just something that isn't out there today. It had to be centered around our vision too. We do have a vision, a compelling and strong one that the whole company is behind. So I wanted to reflect that within the marchitecture as well, because that should almost be really early on in the conversation, as if not coming back to it at the end. It had to drive conversations. I didn't want this to be slideware. I wanted this to actually spur questions for people to want to go deeper in certain areas and use it in a story arc as well. And it had to be simple enough for everyone to understand. One of my favorite sayings is from Einstein: make everything as simple as possible, but don't simplify. And that's so true with the marchitecture as well. So I started brainstorming. I started putting down ideas about how can we visualize this marchitecture. And yeah, I started with the classic diagrams, the stack diagram. You've seen that, right? I looked at different pie charts and segments and concentric circles and what have you, and nothing was really working for me. I needed some inspiration here. I needed something different because everybody else was doing this. And it just so happened that I had been really into reading about the history of the English royalty, especially medieval times. And so I was reading about the Tudors after the Plantagenet kings. And I saw this. This is the Tudor Rose. If you're not familiar with it, Henry Tudor, so King Henry VIII's father. He joined together two houses that were at war after Plantagenet started to fall apart, House of Lancaster and House of York. They had two roses, one for each. One was red, one was white to represent them. When the two houses combined and England was unified under a new king, we got the Tudor rose. And that's what you see here. And I went, okay, there's something here. So what I did was I went to a drawing board, almost literally. And another piece of advice to you is if you're trying to put together ideas from this, what tools you should use, question I often get, pen and paper, whether tree-based or digital-based. Start there. And this is an example of one of the sketches I started to put together. You can see my really badly drawn rose here. And it's starting to take shape here. I've got a little bit of the stack, I've got some concentric circles, and I've got the petals of a rose. It was a bit busy, but it was getting there. And I was testing this idea with some of those key people I talked about before as I was iterating through this to get their ideas and see if I was missing anything. So after all that, where did we land? What was the result? And if you haven't seen it yet, it looks like this. This is the marchitecture that we've been using. And I want to call out a few different things here for you. Let's see if I can get my pointer going. All right, got a laser pointer right here, cool. So a few things I want to point out to you. First of all, you see this PX, product experience is what it stands for. Our vision as a company is to help businesses with products to sell be able to unlock growth through product experiences. That's where we start the conversation. The next part of the conversation is right around it. New products, new markets, new channels. These are examples of kind of business goals that our customers have that we are looking to address. That's the next talking point. But then we go into people, process, data, and technology. This is something we call product experience management. So as you can see, I'm not talking about our offerings or products yet. I'm starting the conversation around the customer and the vision and what they need to put into place as a business. I then go into our technology in the purple circles that you see here. The difference, in case you're wondering, the lighter purple is more around capabilities. The darker purple is more of our platform. And that's product information management, the Kineo PIM. We then have our connectors and add-ons around that. And a few of the other icons you'll see. I call out people who are involved in working with this particular technology in our core product, the PIM. IT, suppliers, internal teams, distributors and retailers, and of course, customers and shoppers. I've called them out. And the other ancillary technologies that work with our product, an ERP, a digital asset management system, e-commerce platform, the list goes on, as you can see. And I wanted to call out that we are investing in analytics and insights. So I'm talking about new capabilities as well as what we have on our roadmap, connecting all of this together. This is the roadmap that we built together. This can be delivered in 2 minutes like I just did. I've also had some feedback from others who said, wow, I actually spent 40 minutes talking through this. And I'm like, yeah, good. It could be a presentation in and of itself. To that point, let me just see if I can turn off my pointer here. Let me turn it off. There we go. So we actually turned this into a build that someone can click through as they're talking so that it is following a story arc, as you can see here. So this was another thing I wanted to make sure that our design could reflect. And that's why I worked with the design team earlier on. And it's thanks to them I was able to actually build this out. So this is another thing we do as part of our presentations. But I did get some feedback that said, this is great. This is like changing how they're talking to decision makers earlier on in the sales cycle, as well as elsewhere, like with analysts and so on. But could we have just a little bit more simpler version? And that could be just something that just summarizes this real quickly or could be used on the website. And so that's what we did. Based on that design, we created a simple abstracted version of that marchitecture. And it's built in such a way that as this grows, we can adapt this very easily, say with more petals around it, for example. And we even gave our marchitecture a name, a Kineo PXM Studio. Or if you like, we came up with a Kineo PXM Studio and we gave it a marchitecture. Either way, it's something we can describe in terms of everything that we do. We also could create versions of that. So the one on the left here is a version of that design that focuses on our connections to other technologies out there and other systems, so that we can highlight certain areas so that people understand where we're focusing. Likewise, on the right, very much focusing on the analytics and insights capabilities of our products that we have. It's just this very simple design change that we could use to be able to reflect where we're talking about in terms of an agenda, let's say, or it could be for other things as well. All right, so that's the marchitecture built. Was my work done? No, of course not. Time to put it into action. So where did we use this? So yes, in presentations that we have, our standard sales deck includes this. And one thing I'm going to tell you to do if you build a marchitecture is put a script. Don't just create it and assume people will know how to talk through it. Create a script because it should reflect the story arc, and encourage people to tailor this according to their audience. So I've delivered this for customers, and I've actually put the specific technologies that they use in their current stack. If they don't call them suppliers and they call them something else, I put that in there. So everything in this is completely editable as well. We've used it on our website. So if you go to our website and you look for Akinio PXM Studio from the menu, boom, there's your image right there that represents the Akinio PXM Studio. And we even went as far as using this as part of a recent launch that we had. Rather than talking about releasing this product and this product and this update and this connection, we just created one single press release and called it Akinio Launches PXM Studio, and used this as the sort of the focal point in word form to describe what we have. We've also used it in online events. So this is from our online conference earlier this spring, and right there in the background, as well as some handsome fellow over there in his basement that you can see on the right-hand side. There's on the, I don't know who that is. But over there, I'm joining my product manager, by the way, is the marchitecture you can see on the screen behind us that we're using as part of this presentation that we gave at our online conference. There are other ways that you all could come up with, I'm sure, but these are some of the ways that we applied this. More importantly, not just where, but why, because these are all things that I can track, and I can actually see what impact the work we have been doing on the marchitecture is having on our business directly or indirectly. So what's next? Can we go further? So there's more that we can do. I'm not done. First of all, I want to be able to create a whiteboarded version of this. So we focused on the presentation and the visual image. I've done it myself, but I want to make sure others are enabled that they could actually whiteboard this thing if they wanted to. So that's one thing we're going to work on next. And that means, yeah, and if any of my salespeople are watching, sorry, we are working on a certification for this so that people can actually test themselves in a safe environment and validate that this is a story that they can give in a compelling way. We want to use this in videos. So you've seen some of the animation aspects that we can have and how it's sort of like that map representation. So videos and video stinger animations is something we're considering as well. And we're also considering this as using it as a map towards the training curricula that we have, so that you get a visual representation of where you need to go to learn about everything that we do. And then it's just looking to see what's coming next and adapting it accordingly in our offering that we have on our roadmap. So what can I leave you with? What thoughts can I have? Basically, building and launching a marchitecture successfully for your business is a journey. There's no destination here. And as you've already seen with us, we're continuing this work. You're never quite done with this, and nor should you be. So key things for you to take away from that as you go on that journey. Marchitecture is something that represents not only what you do and maybe how, but the most important thing is why. And yes, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, so start with why is my recommendation here. And then this is actually the title for a book that I want to read. It's called Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins. This is so true. Marchitectures are not a visual thing and be done with. They are storytelling devices. Irrespective of who they tell that story to, if it's the right audience for you and for them, adapt it accordingly so that the story is compelling and relevant for them to say, yeah, you know what, I want to find out more. And then as product marketing, this is one of those projects where you can be the captain of the journey. You want to find out how product marketing can be more strategic in your organization? Right here, This is one way to do it. But your challenge is you need to get everyone behind this, not just collect their input, but also get them aligned so that they're all using it and understand it as well. That's going to be your toughest challenge, but it's going to be the most rewarding when you figure it out. So this way, when you get to build your own Sagrada Familia, it's not going to feel like you're going to have to hand it over to someone else because it will never get done and you'll never see its daylight. That's not true. You'll be able to see a version of this and you'll see the fruits of it, and you'll be able to hand this off and see it evolve over time and just become this beautiful thing that will represent your company, your customers and your partners and everything that you do and why. So I hope that was insightful. I hope I gave you some good suggestions as well. Wish I could spend more time on this, but Rose, I'm going to hand it over to you to close it up, please.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ali. There are so many great positive notes that people are taking from this and great bits of feedback in the comments section. So I definitely recommend hopping on over and checking that out. We're going to rattle through a few quick questions, though.
Yeah, just one or two real quick.
So first one is noted that it was interesting that customers and partners were the last ones that you shared this with. And what was the reasoning behind that?
So I wouldn't say that they were literally last. To me, that was always, it was the obvious one as a product marketer that I knew I was going to do at some point. But I will say I did them a little bit later because I needed something for them to reflect on, react to. So I didn't want to get it too early, because if I went in early and blank, they may not have been like, well, what's a marchitecture? What are you trying to do here? I'm not sure. But if they saw this in a little bit, I would say closer to final, then they would understand and they would actually help me fill in their blanks.
Great. And then do you have any recommendations on whether you should build your actual marchitecture with animations, or is it better to be flat?
I'm going to answer it in a typical marketing way. It depends. No, here's my suggestion. Go with both. Start with both. I started flat originally. That's what we built towards, but with a view to, can we animate this rather than the other way around?
Yep.
That's what I recommend you do as well. Start with envisioning what does it look like flat so that it's clear, because if just someone just saw it on a screen, would they get it? But keep in mind, okay, could we animate this? Animation may not work. It just depends on which direction you go.
Some good advice. And last but not least, just as a guesstimate, how long did it take you to create this? And also, how long did it take your organization to agree to it?
Okay, the first question I was anticipating. The second part I was not. That's a good one. All right, did it in a weekend? No, of course not. Really, from the moment, like, just sort of let's do this, to actually launching it was 6 months. Now, did I take 6 months to build it? No, probably about 3 months, because we actually waited until we had an event to bring it to market. So really more like 3 to 4 months end to end. What was the second one again about how long did it take?
Your organization to agree to it.
I don't know how long, but it felt quick. So before we went live, we did actually roll it out through internal webinars and things like that, and training and different materials. And it was received really well. And reason being, because I got the company leadership behind it.
Mm-hmm. That was your tip early on.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, definitely hop on over to the chat because there's more comments and feedback. But yeah, really, thank you so much. That was an awesome session.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rose and PMA team. And thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll see you online and around soon. Take care and stay safe, everybody.